Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Talking Bullion. Well, today I have another episode of my Junk Silver series, and today we're going to talk about why I don't stack 35% silver or 40% silver. And those are things such as the war nickels and the 40% JFKs, and then there's another surprise 40% maybe that some of you don't know about. So we'll get into that a little bit more here in a bit, and we'll talk about some of this other great U.S. constitutional / junk silver that's out there that you can potentially collect. But I will give you the reasons why I don't personally collect it. So most people would not consider 35 and 40% silver as junk silver, although it kind of is, right? It's our old U.S. coins that's got some silver in it. Now it's not 90%, but it still has silver in it. It's not like the clad coin of today that doesn't have anything in it. So there are a couple more variations. We're going to take a closer look at those. So we have 35% nickels, which are commonly referred to as war nickels, because they came out during the Second World War. We have 40% JFKs, or John F. Kennedys, which are half dollars. Then we have another 40% that many of you may not know about, and it's the Eisenhower Silver Dollar, which is also 40%. Well, at least some of them were. This you're going to find pretty confusing because I know I do as far as which ones are 40%. But again, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So you're probably thinking at this point, there's other constitutional silver out there and Talking Bullion doesn't stack them? What's up with that? I'm going to show you why I don't stack them, kind of my justification. And again, this is only my personal opinion. I think it's great if you stack them as well and keep them as part of your overall collection or stack that you have. That's cool. It's just I don't prefer to. And that's okay as well. And I'll tell you why. But let's take a look at some details first. So as you'll notice, I don't have any real coins on the screen while I do this because I literally do not have any 35 or 40% silver to show you. So I have to show you some pictures, and I'll use these to refer to what I'm talking about. So 35% nickels were made between 1942 and 1945 during World War II because they needed the nickel for the war. So they took the nickel out of nickels and replaced it with some silver. Now it's not all silver. As we mentioned earlier, there's 35% silver in there. So what happened was on March 27th in 1942, with the authorization from Congress, the material composition of the 5-cent piece, or as we know it, the nickel, was changed from 75% copper, 25% nickel, to 56% copper, 35% silver, and 9% manganese. So they changed it from 3/4 copper, 1/4 nickel to 56% copper, so a little over half, 35% silver, and 9% manganese. So once that was passed by Congress, then the mint got working on producing the nickels. So in October of 1942, the first silver nickels were minted. So along with this change of composition, the mint mark was made larger and placed on the reverse of the coin over the Monticello. This was the first time the P mint mark was used to designate coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint. So prior to this, if a coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, it had no mint mark on it. So when they decided to do the war nickel, they put the P on the back of the nickel for the first time. And another interesting point is that the Denver Mint had already completed its allotted run of nickels for that year. So the San Francisco and the Philadelphia Mints were the only mints to strike the silver Jefferson nickel in 1942. With the Philadelphia Mint striking both new and old alloy nickels, 2 versions appeared from that mint in that year. One without a mint mark, and the other with the P mint mark on the reverse of the coin. So interesting, huh? So in 1942, There is both the regular nickel and the silver nickel made. So they're both out there. So how can you tell if they have silver? Remember what we said? The nickels that had the mint mark placed above the dome of the Monticello on the reverse side of the coin is made out of 35% silver. So at least the mint gave us a clue and allowed us to easily identify which nickels had the silver in them. And check your change, folks, because these 35% silver nickels are still in circulation. So check it out, see if you can find some. It's kind of fun to do that. Alright, so let's talk about the 40% coins. First one I'll talk about is the 40% John F. Kennedys or JFKs. They were made between 1965 and 1970. And it's important to note why I go through this, but then I'm not going to bring in any special coins that were made at certain times. There are, just different collector things that they've done over the years. We're talking about the stuff that the U.S. Mint put out there in circulation that was made and that is potentially still out there that you can find. So on the 40% JFKs, again made between 1965 and 1970, they were mostly hoarded and mostly kept. As most people know, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, shocked and rocked our nation pretty bad, and when the half dollars changed from Ben Franklin to put John F. Kennedy on it, a lot of those coins were immediately hoarded and kept. In the 1964 JFKs are 90%. It's only the 1965 through 1970 which are the 40%. So in 1965, the U.S. Mint stopped making half dollars, quarters, and dimes out of 90%. However, for the next 5 years, they continued to produce the half dollar with 40% silver. And really the best way to tell which JFK is 40% is by the date. Any JFK half dollar has a date of 1965 through 1970 is made of 40% silver. So that's pretty easy to tell. Just like on the nickels, I gave you a pretty good clue on which ones had the silver in them. Alright, so let's take a look at this chart here. This is a pretty interesting chart, and that's about the 40% silver Kennedy half dollar mintages. So as you can see, in 1965, there are plenty of them minted. Over 65 million, almost 66 million minted for circulation, and over 2 million minted for the proof sets. Now for 1965, 1966, and 1967, they really didn't have the original or the normal proof sets. The U.S. Mint put out something they called special mint sets, or you'll hear them referred to as SMS. So during those 3 years, they produced these SMS sets, and that's what these mintage of proofs column is showing, is how many they made for those sets. So you can see in 1966, there's almost 109 million made. These are pretty popular. These things are being eaten up and hoarded as soon as they were made, so the U.S. Mint was just pumping them out. In 1967, look at that, 295 million minted for circulation. And they dropped down a little bit on the SMS set on that one. And then in 1968, they only made them at the Denver Mint. And you can see they made almost 247 million, but none for the proof sets out of the Denver Mint. The ones for the proof sets were made in San Francisco, as designated by the 1968S, and they made over 3 million of those. You can see 69 DNS, nothing in Philadelphia, 70 DNS. And then notice too that the 1970D was only issued in official mint sets, and there's only 2 million of them, a little over 2 million made. So 1970D is harder to find. It's very difficult to find in circulation. And if you want one and go out and buy one, you're going to pay a little bit more money for it. There's usually a little bit of a premium on them because there wasn't that many made. But you can see they also made the S version of 1970 in San Francisco. The quantities were much lower at that point in time. So there's some great information about the 40% JFK half dollar. It's out there in circulation, still available if you want to go looking for it. People find them all the time. And it's really a pretty cool coin. So now let's talk about the Eisenhower dollar and the Eisenhower Silver Dollar. In 1970, a decision was made that the Eisenhower dollar would be minted using base metal targeted at mass distribution and circulation, and another version of the piece would serve as a collectible coin. Ultimately, the US $1 coin, which was minted from 1971 to 1978, featured Eisenhower's face. And it was the first coin of that denomination issued by the mint since the peace dollar in 1935. So between 1935 and 1971, we did not have a $1 coin. So as part of these Eisenhower coins that they made, they also made silver ones, but only through the years of 1971 and 1976 did they contain any silver content, and only with certain versions. So the actual years that the Eisenhower Silver Dollars were minted is from 1971 to 1974 and 1976. So let's take a look at another chart here. This is a chart of the Eisenhower dollar 40% silver coins. And you can see here there's really quite a bit of confusion as far as what coins were silver and what weren't. So you can see they made millions of them in 1971. P&D, well over 100 million of them. But in 1971, they also made an S version, which was 40%. So all the 40%ers were made in the San Francisco Mint. So they have to have an S mint mark on them, or there's no possibility that they're a 40% silver coin. So as you can see, 1971 S, 40% silver. They made 6 million for circulation, almost 7 million, and over 4 million as proofs. So in 1972, they did the 40% from the San Francisco Mint, 2 million and almost a little over 2 million and almost 2 million on the proof side. So then you can see in 73, there was P, D, and S, but see, here's where the confusion starts. And you can see in 1973 that some of the S's were silver and some weren't. So almost 3 million were made in proof sets that were not silver, and a little over 1 million were made in 40% silver. So how do you know? How do you know which one's silver and which one isn't when they both have an S on it? We'll talk about that here in a minute. Let's look at a few more of these numbers. So in 74, they did the same thing. They made some that were silver in San Francisco and some that weren't. And then we have some bicentennial coins that were made in silver as well. In fact, I've got a bicentennial proof set. It's got a 40% quarter, half, and Ike dollar in it. So you can see that they made those as well. So there definitely can be some confusion about whether or not your Ike has 40% silver in it or not. So how do we know? Let's go through a few things here. Check the date and the mint mark. It has to be either 71S, a 72S, a 73S, a 74S, or the bicentennial series, the 1776 through 1976 S, to be potentially silver. All others are clad, made out of just your standard metals. But remember, an S mint mark also could be a clad coin as well. So one of the things you can do is you can look at the edge of a coin. So like I said earlier, I do not have any of the Eisenhower 40%ers, nor do I have a JFK 40%er, but I still thought that I'd take a minute to show you what it can look like. So if you've got an Eisenhower dollar in your hand and you think it might be silver, one of the things you can do is you can put it up next to another coin and you can see whether or not it's silver. Now this is a 90% JFK, so it's probably not going to be quite so bright, but you can clearly see that one coin's made of silver and one coin isn't. See that copper going through there? It's definitely not a silver coin. And I do have a regular Ike coin, 1972. This one's a P, there's no mint mark. This one I believe had a D on it. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a D over there. Alright. And again, if you put these next to each other, you can clearly see the copper running through there. So that's a good way to check, and that's even a good way to check if you have a 90% or 40% half as well. So if I put this between two coppers, look at them, and that just sticks out like a sore thumb. So that's one of the checks you can do, is you can check Check it compared to other coins and see what it looks like. Another thing you can do is you can weigh it. A 40% Ike silver dollar should weigh about 24.64 grams. So put it on a scale that can measure grams, and it should be about 24.6. Where a clad coin weighs about 22.68 or 22.7. So the silver one will weigh a couple grams more. And also check its original packaging, because there was a blue Ike, commonly referred to as a blue Ike because of the blue packaging, and a brown Ike because of the brown packaging. Those are both 40% silver, and that's another way to tell if it's still in the original packaging. But of course, if somebody had it in their collection, even got it as change one day, it's unlikely that it's going to be in the packaging, but if it is, that's great. We also talked about how they also came in a bicentennial uncirculated and proof set, and if they were in there, either the uncirculated or the proof, they were 40% silver in there as well. Alright, so the Ike can be a little bit more confusing, but there's definitely 40%ers out there, so keep your eye out for them. So how much silver is in a 40% coin? Well, the silver content in a 40% Kennedy is 0.1479 troy ounces. So basically 0.15 troy ounces is in a 40% Kennedy coin. In an Eisenhower Silver Dollar, there's 0.3161 troy ounces. So 0.32, so almost a third of an ounce of silver in an Ike 40%er. So that's pretty cool. About 3 of them would make up almost an ounce. So that's quite a bit of silver in those 40% Eisenhower Silver Dollars. Alright, so that gives you a pretty good rundown about the 35 and the 40%. Now let's get to the reason why I don't stack them. Great coins to have. Anything with silver in it's great to have. But there's a couple reasons why I don't stack them. Number one is how much space they take up. For only 35% within the coin, that's a lot. That's 65% of every coin. The space is not silver. Same with the 40%ers. 60% of the coin is not silver. So you're using up a lot of space for non-silver related items. Now I know a lot of people like to stack the 35 or 40%ers, put them in their safe, put them in the bottom of their safe. They make a lot of weight. They're collectible and they're heavy, and they give the safe some good sturdy weight at the bottom. And that's a great reason to do it. Talking about weight, that's the biggest reason why I don't stack these types of coins. So let's go through some numbers here, put them up on the screen for you. So let's talk about guardhouse boxes. I prefer to store my junk silver in boxes where I put them in rolls, and then I put them in a box, and it makes them easy to store and grab if I need them. So here's a guardhouse box with the $50 in there. I got some labels on there, and let's just pull them over here a little bit and bring this down. So as you can see, Walkers, Franklins, AU, BUs, I just make little notes on them. So these can be pretty heavy because there's a lot of weight in here, right? Now these are 90%, these are not 40%, but a nice beautiful Franklin there, right? So what happens is you store these, and they take a lot of weight and a lot of space, all right? So let's look at the difference between a box of 90% JFKs and a box of 40% JFKs. So in the guardhouse box we just looked at, that holds 28 tubes, and in each tube there's 20 coins. So that would be 560 $50 that are in that box. All right? So on the 90%, a $50 weighs 12.5 grams. So each one weighs 12.5 grams. On the 40%, each one weighs 11.5 grams. So there's about a gram difference between the two. All right? So if you convert that into pounds, now we're not looking at troy ounces right now. I'm just talking about the weight. How much does that box weigh, right? So on the 90%, that guardhouse box weighs 15.43 pounds. So let's call it 15.5 pounds, right? That's a pretty heavy box. That's concentrated heavy weight. They are very heavy. So 15.5 pounds on the 90%. And the 40% box, because they're 11.5 grams each, that would come out to 14.2 pounds for the box. So about 14 and a quarter. So 90% 15.5, 40% 14.25. So a little bit more than a pound difference between the two, right? So I mean, really we could say that's about the same. No one's really going to probably feel a pound difference when carrying them. But here's the big deal to me. The 90% has over 202 ounces of pure silver in it, and the 40% only has about 83 ounces in it, 82.82 ounces. So basically, you got to haul out of here, something's happening, you want to grab your junk silver, you want to grab your box of halves, you can grab your 90%er that weighs a pound more, but it has well over 100 more ounces of silver in it. Or you can grab your 40%er and get your 83 ounces of silver. So that's one of the biggest reasons, is that pound for pound, space for space, because they're going to take up the same amount of space, you get 202, almost 203 ounces of silver in that box as compared to 83. That's a big difference. So let's take a look at the nickels. All right, a box of nickels would have 50 rolls in it. Now, I don't have a box of nickels here. I can't show you that. They weigh 5 grams each, so that's going to be 2,000 nickels. And when you do the math, that works out to about 22 pounds. So now you're dealing with a box that weighs 22 pounds, and your halves only weighed 15.5 pounds, so now you're about 7 pounds heavier, and your nickels only has 112 ounces of silver in it. So now you're hauling a box out of here that's weighing 7 more pounds and has half the amount of silver in it. If you're interested, a box of quarters weighs almost 30 pounds. Those quarters are heavy, but they have 358 ounces of silver in it. So that's almost twice what a box of halves. So a box of halves is 202 and quarters is 357. So you're going to be carrying a lot of weight, but you're going to get quite a bit more silver. And just for the record, a box of silver dimes is 13.8 pounds and 179 ounces of silver. So all that said, I said that to say this. You're taking up a lot of space and getting a lot less silver in that space. And for that reason, I don't stack it. I'd rather have my space, which after you collect it for a while, you'll see what I mean. Your space becomes a pretty good premium there. I'd rather have my space stacking as much silver as possible in that space. And that's why I do it. And you know what? After people stack silver for a long time, a lot of times they'll switch to gold just for that reason alone. The amount of space it takes up and how much weight it takes up. You know how few gold coins you could have to replace this guardhouse box? Wouldn't take too much gold to replace that box. So is 35 and 40% bad to stack? Of course it's not. Any silver is good to stack. But if you're trying to reduce your weight, trying to reduce how much space it takes up, then I would stick with the 90% and, the 999 bullion silver. American Silver Eagles, get yourself some gold coins in there, reduce some of that weight as well. But the important thing is to stack and keep on stacking. And that's the reason why I don't stack 35 or 40% silver. Thank you for watching. And always remember, let's keep talking bullion.